Don't confuse attention with love. The greatest tragedy of our time is not that we are unloved, but that we have forgotten what love actually is. These words, echoing through the corridors of modern psychology, reveal a truth so uncomfortable that most of us spend our entire lives running from it. We live in an age of unprecedented connection, yet we are starving for something we can't quite name. We scroll through endless feeds, collecting hearts and likes, building digital monuments to our existence, all while feeling emptier than ever before. But here's what nobody wants to tell you. You've been confusing attention with love your entire life. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly seen, not just noticed? When did someone last love you for who you are when no one is watching, rather than for the performance you put on when everyone is? The difference is everything, yet we've been taught to treat them as the same thing. Attention is the drug of our era. It's instant, it's measurable, it's addictive. Love, on the other hand, is patient, unmeasurable, and often invisible to the outside world. Attention seeks to possess. Love seeks to liberate. Attention demands constant feeding. Love nourishes without needing to be fed. We've created a world where being seen has become more important than being known, where the number of eyes on us matters more than the depth of understanding we share with another soul, where we'd rather be envied than truly cherished, where we measure our worth by how many people want us, rather than by how deeply we're understood by those who matter. This confusion isn't just changing how we relate to others, it's destroying our relationship with ourselves. When we mistake attention for love, we become performers in our own lives, constantly adjusting our masks, never quite sure if we're lovable beneath all the noise we make to be noticed. The symptoms are everywhere once you know what to look for. The hollow feeling after receiving 1,000 likes on a photo. The desperate need to document every experience instead of living it. The way we craft our words not to express truth but to generate response. The exhaustion that comes from constantly being on even when we're alone. The cost is devastating. We're raising generations who equate their worth with their visibility, who believe that love is something you earn through performance rather than something you deserve simply for existing. We're creating a world of attention junkies and love orphans, people who know how to be wanted but have forgotten how to be cherished. But what if I told you that the very thing you're desperately seeking, the thing you're trying to capture, through all that attention seeking, is already there, waiting patiently beneath the performance? What if love isn't something you have to earn, but something you have to recognize? What if the reason you feel so empty despite all the attention is because you're trying to fill a love-shaped void with attention-shaped fixes? To understand how we got here, we need to dissect the machine that turned love into likes and intimacy into influence. This isn't an accident. It's the natural result of a culture that has commodified human connection. Attention operates like a marketplace. It follows the laws of supply and demand, scarcity and abundance. The more dramatic, the more extreme, the more unusual you are, the more attention you can command. It rewards the loudest voice, the most shocking statement, the most perfect image. It's a zero-sum game where someone else's visibility can feel like your invisibility. Love, by contrast, doesn't operate on market principles. It can't be manufactured, manipulated, or maximized. It doesn't respond to strategy or tactics. It exists outside the economy of scarcity because love multiplied is love multiplied, not love divided. But here's where it gets insidious. Attention feels like love when you're starving for connection. The dopamine hit of a notification, the validation of a compliment, the intoxication of being wanted. These create a biochemical response that mimics the feeling of being loved. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between being genuinely cherished and being temporarily desired. This neurochemical confusion runs deeper than most people realize. When someone pays attention to you, your brain releases the same cocktail of chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, that it does when you experience genuine connection. The high is real, but it's borrowed time. Attention-based highs fade. quickly requiring increasingly larger doses to maintain the same feeling. This is why you can be surrounded by admirers and still feel profoundly alone. This is why you can have thousands of followers and still question if anyone would miss you if you disappeared. This is why you can be in a relationship with someone who gives you constant attention, but still feel unseen. Consider the paradox. The more attention you receive, the more isolated you become. Because attention, by its very nature, is about the surface. It's about what you project, not who you are. It's about your usefulness, your entertainment value, your ability to fill someone else's void. The moment you stop being useful, attention disappears. Love sees you on your worst day and chooses to stay. Attention sees you on your worst day and scrolls past to find something more stimulating. We've built our entire concept of relationships on this false foundation. We pursue partners who make us feel special rather than seen. We choose friends who amplify our image rather than accept our reality. We seek validation from strangers instead of intimacy with those closest to us. The attention economy has trained us to confuse intensity with intimacy, excitement with connection, being wanted with being loved. We've learned to equate the rush of new attention with the satisfaction of deep relationship. But intensity fades, intimacy deepens, excitement is temporary, connection is sustainable. The tragedy is that in chasing attention, we often push away the very love we're seeking. Because love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the enemy of the perfect image that attention demands. Love asks you to be human. Attention asks you to be superhuman. Here's what happens when you build your sense of self on the foundation of attention. You become a slave to other people's perceptions. You lose the ability to distinguish between who you are and who you think you need to be to keep the attention flowing. This isn't just about social media, though that's where the symptoms are most visible. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of human worth that permeates every aspect of how we live and love. When you confuse attention with love, relationships become transactional. You start to believe that love is something you earn through good behavior, perfect appearance, constant availability, or endless entertainment. You become a performing seal, always looking for the next trick that will earn you another fish. But here's the cruel irony. The better you become at getting attention, the further you drift from genuine love. Because authentic love doesn't respond to tricks, it responds to truth. And truth is often ordinary, sometimes boring, occasionally messy. All things that attention culture has taught us to avoid. You know this is happening to you when you start editing your personality for different audiences. When you find yourself saying things you don't believe because they get a reaction. When you're more concerned with being interesting than being honest. When you're more afraid of being ignored than being misunderstood. The performing self becomes so sophisticated that you eventually lose track of who you were before the show began. You develop what psychologists call a false self, a carefully crafted version of you designed to maximize approval and minimize rejection. The false self is incredibly good at getting attention. It's also incapable of receiving love. This false self becomes like a prison with transparent walls. Everyone can see in, but you can't get out. You're trapped performing a version of yourself that gets results but leaves you feeling like a fraud in your own life. You become successful at being someone else while failing at being yourself. This is why so many people today feel like imposters in their own lives. They've become so skilled at giving people what they think they want that they've forgotten what they actually need. They're surrounded by people who love their performance but feel completely alone because nobody knows the performer. The false self is exhausting to maintain. It requires constant vigilance, endless energy, and perfect execution. One crack in the facade, one moment of authentic humanity, and the whole house of cards feels like it might collapse. You become afraid of your own emotions, your own needs, your own humanity, because they threaten the image you've worked so hard to create. Meanwhile, your true self, the one capable of both giving and receiving genuine love, withers from neglect. Becomes a stranger in your own life, occasionally sending up distress signals that you learn to ignore, because they threaten the performance. You start to feel like you're living someone else's life in your own body. This disconnection from your authentic self creates a special kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being misunderstood even by yourself. You can't receive love because you don't know who you really are beneath the performance. You can't give love because you're too busy managing your image to truly see others. This is how you end up living someone else's life in your own body. This is how you become successful, admired, and profoundly lonely all at the same time. This is how you can have everything you thought you wanted and still feel empty inside. But here's what I want you to understand. It's not too late. The path back to authentic love begins with the radical act of disappointing people. Let me explain what I mean. As long as you're afraid of losing attention, you'll never discover love. As long as you're performing for approval, you'll never know if you're truly accepted. The only way to find out who loves the real you is to stop pretending to be someone else. This doesn't mean you should become reckless or cruel. It means you should become honest. Start small. Share something real, instead of something perfect. Have an opinion that might not be popular. Show up without the mask for just one conversation and see what happens. You'll discover something remarkable. The people who truly matter don't disappear when you stop performing. In fact, they often draw closer. Because authentic connection is magnetic in a world full of performances. When you stop trying to impress everyone, you start attracting the people who can actually see you. Real love doesn't require you to be anything other than what you are. It doesn't need you to be perfect, successful, or even particularly interesting. It needs you to be present, honest, and willing to see and be seen. This is terrifying for most of us because we've been conditioned to believe that our unedited selves are unlovable. We've internalized the message that we need to add value, bring something to the table, justify our presence in other people's lives. But this is the lie that keeps us trapped in the performance. But love doesn't work that way. Love is not a reward for good behavior. It's not a transaction where you give performance and receive acceptance. Love is a recognition, the recognition of your fundamental worth as a human being, independent of what you do, how you look, or what you achieve. When you stop confusing attention with love, you start making different choices. You stop dating people who make you feel exciting and start choosing people who make you feel at peace. You stop seeking friends who boost your image and start treasuring those who accept your reality. You stop trying to be remarkable and start trying to be real. This shift changes everything. Relationships become refugees instead of performances. Solitude becomes restorative instead of terrifying. Self-worth becomes internal instead of dependent on external validation. You stop asking, "How can I get them to notice me?" and start asking, "How can I truly connect with them?" You realize that the love you were desperately seeking through attention was inside you all along, waiting to be acknowledged. You discover that when you love yourself authentically, not your performance, not your achievements, not your image, but your actual human self, you naturally attract authentic love from others. The journey back to love requires you to grieve the false self you've been maintaining. It requires you to face the fear that without your performance you might be ordinary. But here's the secret. Ordinary is where love lives. Love doesn't fall for the extraordinary performance. It falls for the ordinary truth of who you are beneath all the noise. The attention economy will continue to rage around you. People will still confuse their worth with their visibility, their value with their viral moments, their lovability with their likes. But you'll know better. You'll know that love whispers while attention shouts. You'll know that love builds while attention consumes. You'll know that love is found in the quiet moments between performances, in the sacred space where you can finally stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be honest. In a world addicted to attention, choosing love is a revolutionary act. It's the difference between being admired and being cherished, between being noticed and being known, between being wanted and being loved. It's the difference between performing your life and actually living it. Don't confuse attention with love. Your heart and your life depends on knowing the difference. The world needs fewer performers and more authentic souls. The question is, are you brave enough to be one of them?